Today I am going to tell you all the details of this update, what changes they have implemented and how they could impact the fight against McLaren and Red Bull this season. Stay until the end because I will reveal a key fact that could surprise you. To understand a little, the problems of SF-25 are structural. The car was designed with a low filming philosophy, seeking to maximize the soil effect. But in practice, this has become a trap. The SF-25 operation window is so narrow that any minimum deviation, either due to variations on the track, the climate, or the fuel load, causes a drastic drop in aerodynamic load. This makes the car unstable and unpredictable, making pilots difficult to find a constant balance throughout a weekend. The SF-25 aerodynamic map is another of the great challenges. Unlike McLaren, whose car has a more predictable and tolerant behavior, Ferrari has built a car that only works in its ideal range, a strip so narrow that any minimum alteration takes it out of its comfort zone. This explains why Hamilton and Leclerc have had to use such different career configurations. They are trying to solve problems that should not exist at this level of competition. Hamilton, for example, has confirmed that the car loses a tenth for return just for not working in its optimal height, a figure that, in Formula One, is an eternity. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc has openly said that he has already extracted the maximum potential of the SF-25 in its current configuration. A statement that reflects internal frustration and the perception that Ferrari, at this point in the season, is already limited in what you can squeeze from the car without deep updates. The performance deficit is quantifiable. 0.857 seconds per return with respect to the car that ended second in the Construction Championship in 2024. This gap is not just a matter of numbers, it is the difference between fighting for a podium or being trapped in the middle zone of the grille. That is why the Spanish Grand Prix is so important. It is not just another career in the calendar, it is the scenario where Ferrari hopes to rewrite his season. And he does it with a limited package, a new front wing adapted to the new TD018 technical directive, which regulates the flexibility of the ailerons. This regulation is key because, although McLaren could be harmed, Ferrari has followed a more conservative approach in the development of these pieces. But beyond the wing, what is at stake is the validation of a concept. If the SF-25 does not show significant improvements in Montmello, Ferrari will have to seriously consider if your current project is viable to fight for the championship or if it is time to look around 2026. In summary, Ferrari arrives in Spain with a crucial technical letter, a car that has proven to be fragile in its design, a limited performance window, and frustrated pilots that need urgent results to keep the season alive. Lewis Hamilton arrived in Ferrari with the expectation of being the leader who guided the Scuderia back to the top. However, reality has been more complex than expected. Since his debut with the team, Hamilton has failed to get on the podium, and although his best result was a fourth place in Imola, frustration is evident. The British pilot has recognized that the SF-25 is not functioning as it should, but has also tried to maintain an optimistic tone. He said that the car has potential and that with the updates they could improve, but it has also admitted that the car loses a tenth by return due to problems in the filming height, a critical figure that, in the current Formula One, means losing key positions during a race. Hamilton has been especially vocal in technical meetings, asking for a more stable car in braking and more predictable in long curves. This is no coincidence. Montmello is a circuit that hardly punishes unstable cars, with curves such as 3 or 9 that require maximum precision. Hamilton knows that any balance failure can destroy a return, so he has pressed so that Ferrari adjusts the front wing, check the geometry of the front suspension, and even reconfigure the motor map to improve the traction in the exit of the slow curves. In addition, Hamilton is working closely with his track engineer to optimize tire strategies. Barcelona is a circuit that has historically punished the gums, and Ferrari has had problems maintaining performance in stint. Long tire management could be one of the few weapons that Ferrari has to defend against McLaren and Red Bull, and Hamilton knows. That is why he has insisted on rehearsing different strategies on the simulators, seeking combinations of compounds and stops that allow him to gain time in boxes and compensate for the lack of pure rhythm of the SF-25. But this is where a key question arises. Are these adjustments enough to make a difference against McLaren and Red Bull? Or are we seeing a Hamilton who is trying to get oil out of a car that simply is not at the level of the best? Hamilton is also facing a psychological challenge, adapting to a car that does not respond as expected. In Mercedes, he was accustomed to a car that offered him a solid base to work on. In Ferrari, on the other hand, every weekend is a different challenge. This has translated into notable differences with his teammate, Charles Leclerc, especially in circuits such as Monaco, where Hamilton finished 48 seconds behind Monegasco. Although the specific circumstances of that career penalties, traffic influenced, the gap remains significant. Leclerc, meanwhile, has not hesitated to criticize the SF-25 openly. After the Miami Grand Prix, he declared that he had already extracted the maximum potential of the car, which reflects a generalized frustration within the team. These statements contrast with the most measured tone of Hamilton, who has preferred to focus on technical solutions rather than public criticism. This focused difference could have an impact on the dynamics of the team as the season progresses. And here comes a key point: Hamilton is not just a pilot, he is a leader. His experience, with 7 world titles behind him, allows him to contribute a unique perspective that could be decisive for Ferrari. If you manage to adapt the car to your driving style and find solutions that improve the manageability of the SF-25, Ferrari could step forward. But if the updates do not work, frustration could grow, and tensions within the team could explode in the second half of the season. At one point I will tell you how the new technical directive on ailerons could be the key for Ferrari to cut the difference with McLaren in Barcelona. Do not leave, because this could be the best opportunity for Hamilton to go up to the podium for the first time with the Scuderia. Ferrari arrives at the Grand Prix of Spain at a decisive moment of his season. The team knows that another disappointing weekend cannot be affected, and Montmello is the ideal scenario to measure if the updates introduced, especially the new front wing adapted to the technical directive TD018, are enough to close the gap with McLaren and Red Bull. The key is to understand how this technical directive can alter the balance of power in the grille. McLaren, the team that has most exploded flexible aerodynamic solutions on the front wing, could be limited by the new strict flexibility verifications imposed by the FIA. Ferrari, on the other hand, adopted a more conservative approach in this aspect and could now benefit from a more restrictive regulation that penalizes the most aggressive teams. This technical change may not seem revolutionary at first glance, but in Formula One, a difference of 1 or 2 tenths by return can completely alter the order of the grid. If McLaren loses part of his advantage in aerodynamic load in lines and Ferrari manages to optimize the SF-25 operation window, the balance between both equipment could change radically. This opens the door so that Hamilton and Leclerc fight for podium positions on a track where tire management and aerodynamic efficiency are fundamental. Montmello is a circuit that exposes all the weaknesses of a car. It has high-speed curves, abrupt braking, and technical areas that require stability and traction. If Ferrari manages to take advantage of the characteristics of the SF-25, especially its ability to handle tires and stint long, it could have a strategic advantage in the race. The selection of hard compounds by Pirelli for this weekend also favors teams with less degradation, and Ferrari has demonstrated in several races this year that it can be more consistent in the race pace than McLaren or Mercedes. However, we must not lose sight of the fact that the fundamental performance deficit of the SF-25 is not resolved with a simple spoiler change. The 3/10 gap by return with McLaren is still present, and although the conditions of Barcelona can help, the reality is that Ferrari still needs to find pure speed to aspire to victories. In addition, the psychological factor weighs a lot at this point of the season. If Spain's updates do not offer the expected performance, the morale of the team could sink. Leclerc has already expressed his frustration, saying that he has reached the limit of the car, while Hamilton, although he maintains a more optimistic tone, is no stranger to the pressures of delivering results. A bad result in Barcelona could be the final signal for Ferrari to begin to think of 2026, especially if the great updates planned for June do not meet expectations. If they manage to approach or even overcome McLaren in this race, they could change the tone of the season and recover the ambition to fight for the title. But if not, the next races in Austria, Silverstone, and Hungary become an even greater challenge, especially because other teams such as Mercedes are also working on important updates for that part of the calendar. Ferrari's performance in Spain will be more than a simple result of a race. It will be a declaration of intentions. Or they demonstrate that they can be serious contenders in 2025, or accept that this year it is transition and put all their resources in the 2026 project. The pressure is maximum, and the Montmello track does not forgive errors. Therefore, this weekend it may be the time when Ferrari and Hamilton define the course of their season. At one point I will tell you why the revised rear suspension that will arrive in June could be the true key to transform the SF-25. Don't go, because what is coming could change the season for Ferrari. Ferrari arrives at the Grand Prix of Spain with a mixture of pressure, expectations, and the urgent need for results. The Scuderia has worked counter-relish to prepare a new front wing that adapts to the flexibility restrictions of the new technical directive TD018, a change of regulation that, although it could stop McLaren and Red Bull, also represents a unique opportunity for Ferrari to close the performance gap with its main rivals. The update package that Ferrari leads to Barcelona is limited, and that is something that the team has made clear from the beginning. It is not a technical revolution. It is a first piece of a larger puzzle that should be completed with the large improvement package that will arrive in June. However, the impact of this new spoiler should not be underestimated. If Ferrari manages to take advantage of the convergence of regulations to reduce the advantage of McLaren and Red Bull, he could open a window of opportunities in a championship that, until now, has been dominated by strategic errors and inconsistencies of Maranello. Ferrari's future in 2025 is played in this type of racing. If they manage to obtain a good result in the Spain Grand Prix, with a performance that allows them to approach McLaren or even overcome them, the narrative of the season could completely change. They would go from being the team that struggles to save the year to be serious contenders for the title. This weekend is more than a simple race. It is a test for Ferrari, for Hamilton, and for the entire SF-25 project. If they get a solid result with an impeccable career strategy, good tire management, and, above all, a more predictable and competitive car, they could reactivate confidence in their program. But if they fail, if the problems persist and the lack of rhythm remains evident, the risk of abandoning the development of 2025 will be increasingly real, which would mean fighting this year and focusing on the change of regulations of 2026. The pressure is maximum, the expectations are high, and Montmello's career is the turning point that Ferrari's fate could define this season. Now the question is clear. Can Hamilton lead this comeback and give Ferrari the victory that he needs so much, or will we continue to see the Scuderia trapped in his own technical labyrinth? Leave me your opinion in the comments. Do you think these updates will be enough to change the Ferrari season? Or is it time to think about 2026?